All right, Jason Lamm, let me talk to you on this one. I want to get your sense if you're surprised about this verdict and even the decision on the aggravating circumstances. And if you are, I wonder if you think if the defense maybe fell short in some area. Tell us what you think.
Well, Ryan, I think we need to break the jury's verdict down into the two separate charges because the jury was instructed to consider each count as a separate offense with separate evidence. And first, of course, we have to look at the forgery. The court paperwork that was filed with Craig Cherry's name or John Doe. And that was a separate and distinct count. And there really wasn't a whole lot of dispute about that. Of course, Tammy did get up on the stand and say, you know, it is my signature. I don't remember signing it, though. She sort of half-heartedly protested that one. But that really wasn't that tough of a decision. What the jury's decision really came down to on the conspiracy charge are the acts that occurred after paternity was established. The judge instructed the jury that one cannot have their custodial rights interfered with until after paternity was established. And in this case, as we know, that was the December 17th hearing. So the state had to prove, and obviously did prove, that some overt act was committed by Tammy Smith after December 17th. Could it have been the call to Craig Cherry telling him to lie? Sure. Could it have been the communication with Elizabeth? Absolutely. So that's my take on the guilt or innocence. As to the aggravating circumstances, really that becomes somewhat of a no-brainer. When the jury hears all the testimony, you know, particularly from Logan, how it impacted him, that he hasn't seen his child, he doesn't know where his child is, that's pretty obvious. The presence of the accomplice, again, a no-brainer, because we know that Tammy did not act alone and Elizabeth Johnson was involved.
Okay. Now, Tammy Smith had a reaction to this verdict. We saw her in the courtroom, but she had a reaction after the verdict was read. Take a look.
I just want to thank my team for the beautiful job that they did. And I just want everybody to know that, you know, that I'm okay because I'm in God's will and I'm okay.
All right, Sunny Hostin, she says she's okay. I have to believe that maybe she was a little bit surprised by this. And you and I have talked about this. You know, maybe she had a tough case going against her, but we also thought there was a chance for nullification here. What's your take on this?
Well, I didn't think there was a chance for nullification, Ryan. You and I disagreed about that from the beginning.
Okay.
And I'm comfortable with the verdict. I mean, it seems to me that the forgery count was you know, conceded. I don't think that was difficult. And I think that Logan McQuarrie did quite well on the witness stand, quite frankly. And I think he probably connected with the jury. I mean, these were serious actions that she took. And at the end of the day, there's a missing child. And so I can't imagine that the jury disregarded that. I mean, that was sort of the elephant in the room. Where is the baby? The baby is just nowhere to be found. But I've got to tell you, I think perhaps some folks, although it wasn't in front of the jury, this press conference that was given in which she wore this sort of huge cross and she's talking about, you know, God's will and she's within God's will. I mean, she's a convicted felon. And so I thought that what she said showed a remarkable lack of remorse, quite frankly, and was quite offensive.
I don't know. She thinks she didn't do anything, though. And that's why she's saying, hey, you know, I'm relying on my fate to get me through this, because she still believes after the guilty verdict.
And I'll tell you, Ryan, if she says something like that at sentencing, that's going to be problematic because judges do want to see some sort of remorse. And that's why I point out that utter lack of remorse and indicating that she's sort of, you know, fine with the verdict because she's cloaked with God's will. That's going to be very problematic.
Oh, very interesting. Now, you know, we talk about Tammy Smith a lot, but just as Sonny just mentioned, don't forget there is a father here, Logan McQuarrie, who claimed that his parental rights were being interfered with, and he's lost his son. Now, Baby Gabriel's paternal grandfather, Frank McQuarrie, spoke after the trial and talked about why they'll probably never see Gabriel again.
Where do you think your grandson is?
Probably in that landfill in San Antonio.
Do you believe that Tammy knows where Gabriel is?
No, I don't believe that Elizabeth. I believe Elizabeth is the only one that knows where Gabriel is. And I think that circumstances are she probably did exactly what she said.
Do you have any hope that you'll ever know for sure?
No, I do not believe that Elizabeth will ever say. I have sat through the court proceedings and her attorneys and all of that. And the reason that she doesn't work with her attorneys is she's come to one conclusion in her mind: if she talks about what's happened, then that's going to get out, and she's going to get tried for homicide in Texas. So Elizabeth will never say.
Can you imagine what he must be going through? Jason Lamm, got a question for you here. Tammy Smith convicted of conspiracy to commit custodial interference. Elizabeth Johnson is charged with the same thing. So we know these are two different cases, but how do you think, if at all, this verdict has any effect on Elizabeth Johnson's upcoming case?
You know, I think the verdicts are not going to, the verdicts in this case are not going to affect Elizabeth Johnson's trial. They are not actually charged in the same indictment, but they're charged with the same conduct, so they're effectively severed. It's going to be a different jury, same prosecutors, different defense attorney. What we will hear is in Elizabeth Johnson's trial are Tammy Smith's statements, just like we heard Elizabeth's statements in Tammy's trial. It's called the co-conspirator exception to the hearsay rule. So even though we don't expect Tammy to testify, we expect her to assert her right to remain silent. For that matter, she could be sentenced by the time Elizabeth goes to trial. Tammy will be very much present in the courtroom and testifying in Elizabeth's trial.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. Beth, Sonny, stick around. We have a lot to cover today, folks. That's why I said get focused on today's show, because we're covering 4 different trials.